That would have been a great name for the Loki post show, the Not So Green Room.
Green Room.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, but you know what could have been. So yeah, here's the thing. It says we're live and we've got a viewer, so I guess that's true. Okay, now I can see us. All right. Well, welcome everybody. And Don Shanahan of Every Movie Has a Lesson. If you're out there and you can see this, send up some smoke signals or something. You were here in the studio with us, and then you disappeared. I hope everything's okay and that you'll be joining us shortly.
He just messaged that he's struggling with internet because he is at a new location. So.
Oh, well, okay. So yes, Don, we hope you can join us, and I'll keep an eye on the room to let you back in, or the studio as they call it. But yeah, so we are here to talk Loki, Disney Plus's Loki, episode 4 of which dropped this morning on Disney Plus. And I am here. I am Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. I am here with Mike Crowley of YPA Reviews. And 25 years later, Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck of The Spoiler Room, and David Fowley of Keeping It Real. And as I mentioned, Don was here, and hopefully he will be coming back.
Don was. That's a record producer.
That's correct. Very good.
Look, 5 points Gryffindor.
I know music and movies.
5 points Gryffindor. There you go.
You know, I'm reading Harry Potter 4 right now, so I get that reference.
Oh, there you go.
I'm a regular Steve Rogers. Oh, here comes Don.
There he is. Look at him sweat.
Look,
yeah, here comes Shanahan. Here comes Shanahan.
His mysterious, mystical.
It's that green screen that screwed you up.
Oh,
yeah.
This is Hills of Ireland by Bear Paint. So yeah,
Hills of Ireland.
Hills of Ireland.
Clean as a whistle.
Speaking of Ireland, Galway Bay is opening again.
Yes,
that's right.
That's true.
I got a StreamYard duck blocking my face.
Well, then just move.
You're in the right corner then.
What's up with that? I'm
Yeah.
just going to go over here.
I kept calling this place like Cyber Duck or something.
Is that better?
Yes, David. Actually, that is much improved.
How about now?
Actually, Don, I gotta ask you: is that? I know it's not official green screen paint, but do you know if that would key out? Would that work?
Oh, I'm not trying. I don't want it. I'm not trying for it to be. I'm just
With even lighting it, absolutely would.
You're going to try it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
With
if
the
you
right
lit
lighting,
it, you could. Yeah.
This is the brightest I can get it
a
right here.
couple LEDs on the side.
Yeah, just toss a couple studio lights. You got yourself. You could put yourself on planets.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Nice.
Sitting at the bar I've not been able to use as a bar for 6 years works for me.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
okay. So let's get into the show. Faithful viewer, whoever you are watching right now, we appreciate it. And we're going to do our best to entertain and inform you as we actually get around to talking about Loki, episode 4, which was called the Nexus event.
Oh yeah.
Now let's
What
see.
was your Nexus event?
The bathroom talk can stay in the bathroom, okay, David?
We're all going to talk
Knock that
about.
shit off.
I did have
We're all going to
Taco
go
Bell
around and talk
yesterday.
about our Nexus event.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
had
yeah.
Taco Bell yesterday, so
Taco Tuesday. Look at you go, Mark.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Yeah.
You guys are hitting all the holidays up, you know.
Yes. All right. Well,
Wisconsin tacos.
No better way to
Very-
celebrate the 4th of July than to go to Taco Bell.
He
Hell
dropped
yeah.
a steaming bratwurst in his little stool over there. Let me tell you what.
my goodness. Okay. Speaking of which, we're actually going to talk about Loki now. I have something as a little love note to Mark.
Okay.
This is something that I'm pretty sure was in an earlier episode that I didn't pick up on until now. In the offices of the Time Variant Authority, they have in each of their little chambers, they have kind of wall art and text announcing what room it is they're in. The little theater that Loki was shown his past lives on, we get to see a bit more of that on in this episode. And it's actually called the Time Theater, which got me thinking about the Time Community Theater in Oshkosh, Wisconsin,
There
which
you
is
go.
where we met at the
Yes.
premiere of Dead Weight like 9 years ago. So
Whoa.
How about that?
Hold on. I'm going to tear up here.
Yeah, hold on. The duck will wipe away your tears. Don't worry.
Yeah, the duck will help.
Speaking of which, I don't know if it's up yet, Mark, but folks can go check out our conversation about Howard the Duck.
That'll be
at the spoiler room.
Yeah, that'll be up either tonight or tomorrow. We'll have
Excellent.
that
All right, well, I'll link it below.
Leah
So-
Thompson.
Duck movies.
Very, that I don't know if that is a testament to the enduring love or the enduring revulsion about that movie. Howard the Duck. You say that, people immediately say duck boobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Duck boobs.
Wow.
But
It's
it was
like
PG,
DuckTales,
so it was
you know?
okay. It was PG,
Right.
so it was okay.
It was
He
PG.
lets it go.
I've never seen it.
You've never seen Howard the Duck.
Whoa.
Well, I'll tell you what, David. We are meeting up for Black Widow. Plug. We're going to be talking Black Widow on a live stream in next week, at the opening weekend. When we meet up to go see that, I will give you back your copy of Kong 76 because I will have watched it, and I will lend you my high def Blu-ray, $5 Blu-ray of Howard the Duck.
Wow.
$5.
Finally watch it.
$5.
Kong 76.
Really, he bought it off like some street corner in New York.
Right.
Yes, and it was called Target. But there's a Target on every street corner in New York, I imagine. But
Kong 76 is a good soundtrack. I got that on vinyl.
John
And-
Hickory it forever.
And Howard the Duck is the first MCU film. Listen to our conversation, and we make an argument for it. So,
and it's not much of an argument because Mark, when you laid down those facts, when you spilled that tea, as the kids say, there is no refuting it. It is, that's pretty amazing stuff.
I'm actually kind of surprised that like they don't sneak in like a little Howard the Duck in Loki like they did in the Guardians movies.
Well, there are still 2 episodes left.
It's true.
And given what we saw in the Stinger,
we could see a Duck Loki. Yeah.
Seth Green is much too tall to play Howard the Duck.
I actually feel like I want
too short. I mean,
I actually feel like I want a T-shirt with that image of the Stinger. From I mean, that is just.
It's coming. And something else that occurred to me today, the logo for the Time Variance Authority, that's destined to end up. I don't know if it's already on T-shirts. It probably is.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
There's so much about these movies and shows that just lend them to productizing, which on the one hand, I'm like, ugh, but on the other hand, I kind of want a Time Variance Authority T-shirt.
It's Disney, you know.
Yes, true. But all right. Mark is our resident DC shill.
Oh shit!
Oh boy!
Here comes another steaming bratwurst to his.
This is going to be awful, but okay.
You want Asia, America, Europe with the episode synopsis.
Oh, why'd you have to pick? I'm horrible at these. Okay,
I can't believe
it. All right, so we open. We get to see Asgard again, which got me excited.
By the way, we're gonna keep it kind of a spoiler-free synopsis.
Summary? Okay.
Yeah. So this should truncate it by about 5 minutes.
Can I just say I love how the tallest thing in Asgard looks like a big pipe organ from church?
Yeah, I know.
Anyway,
right?
Go ahead.
So anyway, we get to see how Sylvie ended up being connected to the TVA. A series of events that happened in her past. We get a window into this, and we see why the TVA kind of has it out for her, why they actually have it out for Sylvie. So we then cut to the planet, a wonderful actual sequence of seeing pretty much picking up the events of the end of the last episode where we see Sylvie and Loki, and they're talking, and things get awkward, and then things get really awkward, and then they hold hands. And then just before the planet dies, TVA finds them and captures them and brings them back, and then starts interrogating Loki again. But things have progressed a bit. We have Mobius, who is kind of in hot water, and his boss, which has got a weird relationship. She's in hot water now with the timekeepers. And because of the Lokis, and Mobius confronts Loki, only this time he uses a little bit harsher methods to try to get through to Loki. Loki reveals something that was given up in the last episode by Sylvie, and that starts making Mobius start to question a few things. Meanwhile, we also have, along with this, our favorite hunter, B15 or 13.
B15.
B15.
My favorite square in Battleship. You got it.
There you go. B15, on the other hand, we find is acting a little odd, and she's been feeling a little odd since her encounter with Sylvie when Sylvie possessed her body back in episode 2. So we see that effects going on. Loki once again confronts Mobius. Mobius starts digging in deeper to what Loki may have dropped this little tidbit. I'm trying not to be spoilery here, trying to drop a little tidbit to bring some doubt about the TVA, doubt that we all at the audience probably have had for quite some time. And Mobius is signing off, the case closed. They figure they got this stuff taken care of. And then he finds another piece of evidence that relates to the other hunter that Sylvie touched earlier, who got to see some memories.
And she is C20, I think.
C20, yep. Yeah, C20. Yeah. And Mobius suddenly discovers something, that things aren't on the up and up with the TVA. He decides to go and get Loki out of this time loop trap, which gives us a wonderful cameo, which just makes me want to see more of the person in the cameo. And hopefully maybe we see more of that person in the She-Hulk series. Who knows? But
she would have made a great She-Hulk anyway.
Yeah, she would have. And then he pulls Loki out because he's like, okay, maybe you're something going on here with your theory. But then Mobius...
Here's where I'm going to step in.
Go ahead.
From there, stuff hits the fan.
Yeah, stuff hits the fan.
Because
we'll just
you
stop
can't
there,
really talk about the rest of the
no.
episode without getting into...
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Talk about here.
Good job, Mark. Good job, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
I tried. I'll just take a sip of my wine slushy here.
I couldn't have done it better, nor would I want to.
My wife works at a winery, and they serve wine slushies for the summer.
Oh my goodness.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious.
What?
That was the moment David Fowley realized he was living in the wrong state.
Road trip.
Steaming bratwurst.
Wine slushies. I'm there. Okay.
Wine slushies.
So here's, we're going to talk. I put on the spoiler banner just again. We're serious. We're going to get into all the nooks and crannies of this episode. So if you have not watched Loki episode 4, please turn back now and come check us out when you have, because we're going to get in some really fun commentary tonight. But what I'd like to do is, like the way we open up every show, kind of go around and get their high level opinions. I want to start with Don, because in our little Facebook message group earlier today, you were saying that this did not feel like the filler that you thought last week's episode was. So give us your thoughts on what did you think of the Nexus event?
We went from the worst to the best for me. I thought this was the best episode of the series so far. I thought not only was the men of action being the men of action, but we have a lot of excellent strong female characters along the way, really make an impression between B-15 and Ravonna and Shaloki. So I really thought this was a great place where I wondered where they left off at the end of last episode, and I kind of knew they would squeak through and get whatever they had to get through. We all knew it was coming, but the where and the how and what transpires next was really worthwhile and amped up where this series was going. Like any mopiness of like, well, we're just kind of kicking the can until we figure things out. No, we're going, and the accelerator button was hit, and that was cool to follow along with that.
Wow,
excellent. Yeah. Oh, I want to mention on that kind of Owen Wilson-esque note, we didn't get a wow this episode, but we did get a.
Did it get a how? I noticed that immediately. I got so distracted. I had to roll wine to see what we were talking about because it just kept going. Wait, was that our wow?
Imagine if you would have listened to that line while drinking a wine slushie.
There you go.
All right, so Mike, what did you think of this one?
I kind of really validated why the third episode might have been fillerish, because you do need a little bit of breathing room, like with your show.
I get it.
Because like if everything's going a million miles an hour, I think the brain can only handle so much until like you kind of need to be a little bored a little bit. So having said that, I really enjoyed the progress of the story. I was thinking of one note you were saying when you said, I hope this isn't another tale where Loki, does something horrible and then he gets a redemption. And I'm going, wait a minute. He's kind of getting a redemption here because he's freeing everyone from the TVA. So we are getting that storyline, but it's good enough in the writing where although it's repetitious, I'm along for the ride. Does it feel a little cliche, like a little bit like, oh, let's free everyone from the bad guy? But overall, a lot of revelations were made. It almost felt like the last episode so much happened. I was the last. I remember revealing like going to the last few minutes. I'm like, wait a minute, how many more episodes is this? Like,
if this was the cliffhanger before, if this was the cliffhanger before season 2, and we all had to wait 6 months to a year, we'd be blowing our minds right now.
Yeah.
I want my own show with Richard E. Grant, but
yeah. So once I get through everything, and then I realize there's 2 episodes left, I'm going, I hope this is still very interesting, and I hope it doesn't end like WandaVision where everyone's just shooting lasers at each other, essentially.
Yeah. It's coming. It's coming.
Well, all right, cool. David, what did you think?
I thought that this episode kind of confirmed how much I appreciate the previous episode, just because it seems like this episode really kind of stuck the landing on how important the last episode was, meaning the lament. Is it Lamentia? What was the
Lamentis?
Lamentis. Yeah. What happens on Lamentis is kind of pivotal for, and it makes sense that that's episode 3. The bulk of Lamentis was episode 3. Because I think what happens there is such an eye-opener, and it bleeds into this episode in a big way. And it made me I appreciated what the characters learned, pretty much everybody, well, mainly, Loki and Sylvie, what they learned on that planet, the last episode, bled over to this one in a really interesting way.
How so?
Well, I think that it, obviously it was a kind of a wake-up call for Loki that, the whole everyone's a variant thing, and that, this is a totally, different situation. And also the connection between him and Sylvie was, I think, kind of surprising for Loki. Maybe for Sylvie, I don't know, but I think that it granted, it does get a little cheesy when it says, basically like love is the big, variant and the big, the splinter in the time continuum. But, like I said, I think it just kind of confirms that what happened last episode was kind of pivotal for the rest of the show, that there is that connection between these 2 characters, these 2 strange characters that are supposedly the same person, kind of, in a different, different kind of multiverse, but there's this connection. And, I like that moment when Mobius said, like, okay, of all the narcissistic things, you're basically falling in love with yourself. You should love yourself, but, with measures, right? But, but, I just, I like the way it kind of goes back to Lamentis a little bit. Even in this episode, a little bit more when we see the both of them are sitting there, and then we see that the oncoming, I think it's an oncoming moon that's being destroyed and everything. Yeah, it was. I'm glad that it wasn't just like zip. The TVA kind of rips them back, and we never see Lamentis again. We do kind of go back to it but I thought that this was really interesting where it went, especially with forget the name of that time cop, but I thought that she was really, really great in this one.
Wait, B-15?
Yeah, B-15. There
yes.
we go. I thought the actress was really great in this one. I thought, she's been great, but I thought that they gave her a lot to work off of in this episode specifically, so it was cool.
That's the thing, is like
rain moment was great.
And that's the thing, is like this, I have not, contrary to what you're saying, David, I have not liked her really in this show leading up to this. She does okay, but it just felt almost like this was her first role. But it kind of makes sense in that she's not very impressive as sort of a leading presence, because she's not supposed to be.
Right.
But she does come into her own in this episode because she starts to realize, much like everybody else, and again, we are talking spoilers, that she is a variant, and so is everybody else around her. So we really, there is that light kind of going on in her eyes and sort of behind her eyes, and you can see her really figuring things out and trying to figure out, okay, now what do I do with this information? I think is really impressive. Her name is, I'm going to try and get this right, Wunmi Masaku. So yeah, I don't know what else she's been in, but
she's been in Lovecraft Country on HBO, right? And then His House.
And Mark knows that she was in Batman versus Superman.
Yep.
Who was she in that?
She was
Kahina Ziri, right?
Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
Who? Me neither. I'm
just looking at IMDb. She was cheating.
She was also in.
You have to watch it again. You'll have to watch it again. I'm not going to.
No,
I'm not opposed to that.
Mark. Mark.
She was also in.
It's my birthday. Why would you wish that upon me?
Yeah.
All right. So, well, thank you for that. Mark, yeah, I'll let you go, and then I'll give my quick thoughts on it. But what did you think, Mark?
The episode, I was glad the way it ended because I was kind of worried we were going to get another slower episode. I didn't mind it slow because you got a lot of character stuff, but as far as progressing stuff, they were taking a little bit of time, and you kind of see the runtime going, okay. I mean, I understand what you guys are stretching this out a bit, but if you're going to go where I think you're going to go, and they do, it's like, okay, they confirm a lot of things in here that a lot of us have already predicted. I mean, and a lot of things that Loki suspected already, at least about the timekeepers, that they're just a bunch of, bubkiss. And I like with Mobius what they did with him. I mean, in all honesty, he's surprising me. He's surprising me in this series quite a bit. They're giving him more than just playing the dumb blonde surfer dude. They're giving him some meat here, especially when he does the swapping of the pads. I like that bit because it wasn't quite expected. I'm like, okay, wait, is he kind of rolling with this propaganda machine? And then he does the swap thing, and like, oh, he's not, and then she's got that reaction too, and they just have that wonderful scene there. And then at the end, near the end, where he finally kind of puts two and two together and going, holy crap, not everything is what it seems. I like that. I liked how it progressed, and I was especially happy that they gave us some answers now because we only have 6 episodes. And if they would have hung it on further about the time, like if they would have ended it with them meeting face to face with the timekeepers and then credits, I would have been I would have been very upset. But you could see where they would do that, for an ending line is, oh, they're facing, and what more words do you have to say before you die, and credits, and you're just like, but no, we get a great value Thanos timekeeper, and we get Gimli replica timekeeper, and I don't know what the middle one was, but
it reminded me of a Bill and Ted thing.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, but
their separation is imminent.
What I love is they give you answers, yet they don't, because the question then is still hanging out there. Okay, who is actually running it? And all of you are Marvel experts, far more than I. But my honorable son and I did some digging and looking at where they could go with this storyline, just learning some of the MCU references.
Drop a name.
It's pretty crazy. He Who Remains, running it from like deep time twisters, timekeepers, getting into that where they could possibly go that route with them.
I don't understand anything of what you just said.
He Who Remains is the one who created the timekeepers, time twisters, but the time from Thor, but time twisters, which he created to try to teach the next galaxy to be good, or just how to live and teach them the ways. They didn't do that, so then he came up with the timekeepers, to do that.
Oh, look at this guy. He's
And-
learning.
I'm learning.
Like a kid giving a book report in school. Like
I feel like
what I
I-
heard, guys.
I feel like that kid up at the school. I
Yeah.
read the book.
He's crossed over.
Very good, sweetie. Good
but
job.
I'm just learning, okay? But
Yeah.
I mean, just reading just the slight references. I'm going. They could, with this and Doctor Strange in the multiverse, which I'm really looking forward to. Like, they could take this into some wild and crazy directions, which makes me very excited. I don't think they're going to go there because I think that's going to be a little too out there for a lot of people. Maybe it's hard to say. Maybe I think they're going to go more along the lines of Kang the Conqueror. But yeah, I liked how the story, Nameless, progressed in general. But I'm just hoping they don't J.R. Ewing it.
That's a good point.
Because with the whole idea of the sacred timeline, what if all of this is actually Bubkiss? The timeline isn't even the actual timeline
I love
because
that theory.
And the only reason I say it is the way this thing opens, we have Sylvie, but Sylvie is a young kid. She's not just being born. You're telling me that the variant didn't show up on her radar until she was a kid playing? No, they're grabbing these people playing off like their time variants, and the eraser bomb, I don't think is actually destroying as much as they think. I think it might be destroying the energy field left over from when they teleport, possibly. And someone running this is going around kidnapping people from time. The time part is correct, but for their own nefarious purposes and not for what we think is actually maintaining the actual timeline where all the Avengers and everything takes place.
I love where he's going with that.
Well, that sounds kind of like what Disney Star Wars did with the First Order, where they were going around kidnapping children and turning them into stormtroopers. Which
Anyway,
if it works.
I'm just a
Ian,
DC show.
Speaking
so
of
I don't know.
stormtroopers, the crazy thing is that speaking of stormtroopers, the crazy thing that I just learned is that Kaylee Fleming, who plays young Sylvie, was young Rey in Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker.
So she's only got one more project left in her
Yeah, I was
Disney
gonna say,
contract.
she's got that Disney contract left. She's an MGM player right now.
And Judith Grimes from Walking Dead. It's great.
Lifelong contract, gonna follow
Right.
her till she's an old lady or character comes back.
Wait till Louis B. Mayer gets a hold of her. She's done for. Yeah, exactly.
She's going to be the next Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
There you go.
But no,
Ian, what are your thoughts, man? You're capping us off here.
Sorry.
it's fine. I really dug this episode. I think I'm in line with everybody. The only problem I have is it's sort of a Disney problem, and I guess a Marvel problem, which is they've established that anything can happen in these TV shows in this movie universe, because all you need is a gemstone that can rewind time, or someone who can build a time machine and correct things. So when Mobius dies, I thought that
He
was
didn't die.
well, no, I would love it if he died. I would love, as much as I love Owen Wilson, I wanted that, because that was a hell of a final moment. Like when he says, because there was that whole conversation that he had with Ravonna Renslayer in her office, and she says, if you could go anywhere at any time, where would you go? And he doesn't really have an answer until his final scene, when he and Loki get found out because he learned the truth about the variant deal. He says, you know what? You know where I'd go? I'd go back to whenever and wherever you found me before I became part of the Timekeepers. Maybe I had a jet ski. And at that point, she says, dust him or
Prune him.
prune him. And he goes out. And I was like, for a split second, I felt like I was going to cry, because it's such a great ending, and it's so well performed. You feel really bad for him, because it's a desperate kind of like, he knew he was screwed, but he still kind of give them the middle finger and stick up for himself. And it was like a real bursting through of identity. I thought it was great. But then in that almost that same instant, I'm like, but they could bring him back. And that, but that's the thing. Even that notion, so cheapens everything in these series. It's the same thing with the Black Widow. Like when she died in Avengers Endgame, I didn't feel anything. I know it's supposed to be the big heft and the big sacrifice, but I'm like, there's talk of a Black Widow movie. Plus, she may just come back because of actor contracts and all this other nonsense.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'll ever love again, you guys. But otherwise, I think it was a hell of an episode. I was surprised that they gave away the timekeepers this early. To me, they reminded, they were a bit like the overseers in Bill and Ted, but I was reminded of the quintessons from Transformers the movie.
Yes.
Guilty or innocent.
Yes.
Now we're talking.
Now we're talking. I would have loved to see their heads turn around. Innocent. No, guilty.
But that's totally it. But even that moment, and I've realized, I think it's just Kate Herron, the director, and whoever she has doing the fight choreography. I'm just not a fan. I'm a fan of whatever they do when it's not action oriented, because it's almost like someone steps in and does the little clapper to say, now the fight scene begins. And then I just feel like I'm always watching a dress rehearsal of like, now block, hit, duck, kick. There's nothing exciting or organic. It's all these boring medium shots.
I expect to see the Batman pow, bam, smack.
Yeah.
There's enough delay. There's time to put those in there for sure.
It's only when Sylvie and Ravonna are kind of going at it, and Sylvie gets that good like punch right into. It almost looks like she's punching into the ground because there's a lot of mist and everything, kind of obscuring what's going on. That I thought felt kind of tense and real. Plus, Sylvie is all kind of her hair's out of place. She's very unkempt. She's not the same Loki, She-Loki wrapped in an aura of mystery and propriety that she was when we first saw her. And I love that kind of breaking down of her character.
Yeah, she's kind of tired now.
Yeah, and but I am just getting going in my enthusiasm for her, which I think is wonderful. I'm curious to find out where this goes. But again, even Loki gets Han Solo'd sort of in this in this scene, but then he wakes up in the post-credit sequence. Right. I was a bit worried that okay, now they've killed Loki. There's 5 minutes left to go. Are they really going to turn this into like it's? They've literally written Tom Hiddleston out of the Loki series. But he wakes up in this alternate universe, and there's a big black Thor, and there's tired old looking Richard E. Grant in like Loki comics period costume.
Classic Loki.
Classic Loki.
There's like a little pig Loki or something like that.
Kid Loki with a lizard.
No, it's a crocodile. I think. Crocodile Loki.
Yeah, do we know what he's supposed to be?
So it's Kid Loki, it's Crocodile Loki, it's Boastful Loki, which was the Black Loki.
Because he had like a hammer, though. I thought it was supposed to be Thor or something.
Right. No, he's
so
the
crocodile's a Loki is actually Loki.
Because he has the little horn thing.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I thought it was just like a pet that the kid put.
You too can be Loki if you go get them.
And if you watch it again, in the background is a dilapidated Avengers tower. So it's like post-apocalyptic New York.
Okay. Yeah. I did notice that.
Yeah. Here we go. And my worry with that they're going to DC this up, man. They're going to CW this shit.
I like that. I like that it's almost like a dirty dozen version of Loki's. Like Loki's got to they kind of got to get together to clean up all this, and and did you guys notice that the way the stinger was, it was basically like the end of the first Avengers, where Loki's on the ground and the Avengers are over him. And then in this case, Loki's on the ground and these other Lokis are over him, looking at him. It's a nice parallel.
It's going where I thought it would, though, is that we're going to get just an army of Lokis. We're going to get a throng of Lokis, I think, for this, whether or not they're in battle or just we end up seeing so many more variations. So I'm kind of excited with that, and it should be surprising. Considering the MCU at one point came up with a character, I did some homework. I feel like I'm the kid doing the book report, who had a character named Clockwise, which plays into She-Hulk possibly later, but they have a weapon called the Retroactive Cannon, which is actually alias Retcan. Okay, so it should not surprise you that the universe that we see Loki's in, they're going to be retcannoning any character they want to.
They could.
Kiss your mother with that mouth.
I could just see Sony dancing around in celebration.
I know, right now. Right? Can we borrow that for a second?
We did it.
Exactly.
I'm just saying. On one hand, I'm with you on that, Ian, because when Mobius gets hit with the prune, it was actually at that moment when I said, "Oh, when they prune someone, they don't die." I don't know why, but just watching it, with when he gets it, I'm like, even though it was emotional for a second, I'm like,
yeah.
Wait, when they're pruning people, they're not actually killing them. I bet you. And then Loki and the stinger at the end confirmed. I'm like, okay,
Well, but that kind of brings up a whole host of questions, which is when they do get pruned, do they all go to alternate realities?
Right.
And whoever's, I mean, this gets into the whole thing of like, but are the timekeepers, if they're not real, or at least maybe the timekeepers are real, and it's just that thing we saw in the throne room, that triptych of beings, those were just like the face of it, like they were the receptionist to the actual timekeeper's chamber.
Wizard of Oz going on right there. There's so
very much so.
Totally.
Immediately I saw that, like when I saw like how I'm like, oh, that's not CG. Maybe that's why they don't use puppets, and they're kind of making a point with that because you see how fake it looks, like with
and they all laugh.
2021 camera,
it's their Showbiz Pizza.
That's exactly what I told my kid. I'm like, oh, they show up with the Showbiz Pizza.
That was so creepy.
It's the rocks on fire explosion.
You gotta see how they make the food on camera, by the way. If someone's been on those sets, there's a reason they say don't eat the props.
Oh, yikes. But I want to get to a question that I have about this series. As much as I like this series, it does sort of continue this trend of Disney, and this is more so in the movies, but it's also bleeding over into the television series, taking their villains and sort of making them not really villains anymore.
Agreed.
Is there a problem with that? I mean, is it conceptually, can they get away with it as long as the writing's good? Because I'm starting to feel like, there's going to be a Thanos prequel series where it's like all about his life on that homeworld. And he's like, wow, he was all right all along.
And we still get sympathetic Thanos moments, So
true.
I do think it's a problem. At some point, you just need an evil MFer to stay being an evil MFer. I don't need a Doctor Doom movie where he's like kind of okay and on the same team as Reed and Sue for a while. No, make him the baddest son of a bitch in the room. When King the Conqueror gets here, make him the baddest son of a bitch in the room. I do see this as a problem because you have the same thing happen. Even with, I know you folks haven't, some of you in the room haven't seen it yet, but even Black Widow, like Black Widow has a history where she's a villain, she's a killer, she's an assassin. The red in her ledger is all we hear about, but Disney will never show a drop of that red because she's a hero and we need this to look good for girls and we're still Disney, where I think you're going to get these little weak sauce villains for quite a while. Unfortunately, I don't think they got the balls to really do a hardcore legit evil villain or if they do, it's Hammy. It's the Emperor from the Last Jedi, or from Rise of Skywalker. Like it's some over the top, clearly evil, no chance in hell of it being something different. Because if there was ever an actual human villain that shows a breadth of emotion of being evil, they're going to Kylo Ren him and turn him into a nice guy at the end.
Well, I think the only villain in the MCU who doesn't have that type of writing about them is the Red Skull.
Yeah, I agree.
And hardcore to the end. And that's perfect for him. I mean, I don't know if it's so much about the writing or about the actors who are cast as these characters. Because, I mean, man, Michael B. Jordan, man, you want to see the different dimensions of this Killmonger. Tom Hiddleston, how long has he been Loki? And I feel like each time we're getting something more from him as a what he brings to the character. So I'm not opposed to it. I've always thought Loki is, he's a threat and everything, but he's just kind of more of like he's so complex. Yet he's been one of the best MCU villains next to Killmonger.
Loki's not one of those guys that needs to be what I'm talking about of the baddest son of a bitch in the
No.
room. Like, let him be this playful shades of gray, arrogant stuff.
You
They're
want
playing
like
this
a
one
looming, scary threat like Thanos. Like, although he's evil, like although like there's a tiny sympathetic side to him, but you're scared because there's stakes. There's consequences. Like
you
when
said
they
the word
when
scared.
they first zap Owen Wilson, you're like, oh my god,
Right.
those are consequences. Mobius is dead, but then he comes back, and now with the multiverse, everyone can live. I get that. But yeah,
Well, you said the word scared.
We're actually scared, and there's real stakes. Like that's where I'm wondering how it's going to work with the multiverse.
I think on less than one hand can you name a scary MCU villain, because they're either caricatures or they're these tweeners,
right?
And I think it's Thanos, and I can't put Drax. No, who's the guy from who's the hammer guy from the first Guardians? Ronan like tries to be hardcore, but
I mean, I think still Red Skull.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
the thing. You've got to go back to like the early MCU, and then even back to the unofficial MCU. I'm thinking of like, as goofy as that movie was, like Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin and Daredevil, and then also Colin
Farrell.
Colin Farrell is Bullseye. Stephen Dorff in Blade. I mean, it's almost like you have to go back to a different era. Mark, you and I
but
a couple weeks ago talked about
too.
Yeah,
sure, but Mark, you and I were talking about a couple weeks ago, Superman 4: The Quest for Peace.
Yeah,
not a good movie by any stretch, but it still had Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. Now, whatever you think of how goofy they made him in that later picture, in the original Superman and even Superman 2, you want to talk about villains, Zod and his crew from the Superman 2, they were, you can't conceive of a TV show where they're going to have Zod and his two buddies, or even Lex Luthor necessarily, that incarnation of him going for 6 episodes and like, by the end they're kind of cuddly. No. And that's
evil to the core.
And that's why I think
I will say that did work with Man of Steel when Zod destroyed Metropolis.
And
that was Michael Shannon.
And kind of just like let Zod push explosive trucks towards buildings. Like, oops, like.
Well, but I appreciated the ruthlessness of Zod, and to David's point, there was a good. Solid performance in there, even though it was a bit screamy. But you didn't see, you kind of understood where Zod was coming from. But at what point did you think, okay, I get what you're saying, but you're still horribly wrong?
It was actually very similar to, pardon my blasphemy, but the Zod in Man of Steel was very similar to Thanos as far as motivation and what he was doing. And I think that's what makes it more scary. I think you can get your straight up over the top villains, but I think the scary ones are the ones like the Zod and Man of Steel and Thanos, the ones who think they're doing right.
Or Magneto thinks he's doing
or
right.
Magneto, or even Magneto's another one. Exactly, Magneto's another one too.
But Magneto's traded sides with his little course the whole time.
I mean, if you want to get villains, the only other one that creeped me out a bit, and I know this is going to be a chuckle, is Maw. From
Octavia Spencer? No.
Wow.
I
mean,
no,
you're not wrong.
That is a
save that clip. That
but the one they all call Squidward in Infinity War.
I know which one you mean.
He was actually creepy though, and he was one of those.
Guy.
Yeah, he was so devoted to. We don't get a lot of them.
Sucked out into space,
right? But he, even out of the hanger-ons for Thanos, was the most scary one because he was the most devout to Thanos. I mean, he was all in, and he didn't care. Thanos told go kill those puppies. He'd go, okay, boom. That you know what I mean? That's a scarier villain, and I think they can get away with doing Loki soft. Is one his character? He's never been a true evil. He's a narcissist and he's selfish and he's looking out for himself, but he does not go true evil. That's what I think I love about his character. Not since the first Avengers movie, and even then it almost felt like he was going through the steps of being a villain because he wanted to get what he wanted, but at the same time he wasn't like Thanos. He wasn't driven. He was still, And in this one, this gives him a little play because let's not forget, at any one time, it's what Ian said, and the problem they have now with the timey-wimey stuff is he can play Loki by the end of this as a good guy. They could make him as a good guy. Doesn't change from what MCU says, which I'm still trying to draw the lines on, doesn't change what he does later on in the other films from when he dropped out of the timeline. That other Loki, from what they explain it, has still done the bad things. Okay,
Yeah.
so, they could play with this alternate Loki and make him however you want, because technically, at the end of the day, he still becomes the evil Loki that we've all seen.
Well, that's the
Who else
interesting
really
thing,
ends up
too,
dead,
is
yeah.
because even in this episode, they keep talking about how he keeps on dying,
Right.
and yet he comes back, and yes, he loses, but he always comes back, and he keeps on dying. Does he ever learn from anything? Not really. I mean, it's interesting how I think this episode really drives home the fact that there's all these loops, right? And it's even something that Thor said to him in Ragnarok, is like, you and I, we keep on, we're supposed to change and grow, but we keep on going into these loops, and we keep on, it's almost like the Batman Joker talk from Dark Knight between the two of them. It's like, you need me, I need you. But it is this loop that, Loki keeps on losing, but he's always there, continuing to, exact his mischief and keep trying, yeah.
Yes, I agree. I guess what I was trying to get at with my initial question in a roundabout way is it possible to have a movie or a TV show about a villain in which they are still evil at the beginning, but at the end as they are in the beginning, but have some kind of a compelling arc that can keep the audience on board? Because honestly, I'm looking at Maleficent, I'm looking at Cruella, now I'm looking at Loki. I just can't get jazzed about like when Disney says, "Oh, we're gonna, focus on this villain, or we're gonna have a twist on a timeless story." I'm like, you're just gonna water this nonsense down until it's unrecognizable from what I grew to love in the first place.
You even have 3 prequels that make Darth Vader a cute kid.
Not even a cute kid, a petulant brat.
But you
they
get
go there. They
go there, and not only do they go there, but Sith ends with one of the worst scenes that they didn't need ever. Thank you. What's funny about that scene, not to get off but subject, but it is irrelevant to that changing. It's like one thing could change an entire character, and the no changes Vader completely at the end of Sith.
It's terrible.
If they cut out the no, if all they did was have him come up on the table, not ask about Padme, not anything else, he just steps off the table, looks at himself, and then they cut to them on the bridge of the Death Star, and he just crosses his arm and stares. That's all you need, and suddenly he's the badass again. But by him going no, now you're like, well, there's just this whiny, he's holding me back. I inside the Vader suit,
I can just see in the studio room, and they're like, "Okay, James Earl Jones, we want you to. Thanks for coming out of retirement. We want you to say no." And he's like,
and all the record is like no, and then there's some dubber just takes it down the soundboard.
It's like,
did you get that number of zeros?
Like auto tune.
But I mean, the villains. You're right. I mean, Disney. It's interesting where they're going, because we've mentioned before too with Disney's and no gun policy, yet they've picked up Fox, which has a bunch of properties that involve guns. And if they're going to carry those forward, what are they going to do with those?
Replace them with walkie-talkies.
Yeah. And it is something to where it's okay to have just a straight up bad villain. And I think you could do not a whole series. You can do a movie that at least give you understanding for motivation behind the villain, and not have that movie end to where, oh, I feel sympathy for him, but end to where, okay, I can see where he come from. You're still being an ass, and he's, and ended going to do his bad duty, but
Yeah, that's the thing, is if they ever do a good Doom, yes, you could bring that whole Victor Von Doom competition with Reed Richards thing, and that's fine. But he's still, deplorable, just terrible person, and we need to keep it that way. It's like, you need those villains. It's like that's what was the worst thing about Cruella. This movie is like, who wanted some kind of like sympathy for this terrible. That's why we loved her, because she was so terrible.
But that's where Emma Thompson's your substitute, because that's Cruella DeVille, you know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But no, Marvel needs a Kaiser Sose. You know,
they do.
They need someone that is mythic enough to be like, you heard about this guy? This guy's gonna F you
Howard the Duck.
But they had it with Thanos. They whispered Thanos along the way, and Thanos left a body count, which never happens in most Marvel movies. So you need that again, and they're gonna have to build it up. You can't.
And that's what it's going to be interesting to see how they handle Phase 4.
Mm-hmm.
In that, you know, in all honesty, I think they painted themselves a bit into a corner. And with Phase 4, as much as we give credit for the way they planned out 10, and I love both properties. Okay, guys, I do like DC. I know many people. I love MCU stuff and what they've done, but it is getting a feeling of them not quite sure. Okay, we did this. This is awesome. Oh crap, people want more of this. And even though they have their diagram, it doesn't feel right now with the way they have set up for the next movies coming out, like they have it set up quite as much for the big bad villain that you had with the first phase in Marvel. I mean, it was like, holy crap, they're going to do Thanos. And a lot of us were like, I know the name and I did research in that, you know, but this one, we've got 3 series now, and they haven't really teased a big baddie at all.
And that's okay.
And
that's cool.
Mephisto.
It's Mephisto. No, they're never going to do Mephisto. They're just going to let audiences run with Mephisto.
But they're not making the X-Men mistake, which is we have to top ourselves every time. So
that's true.
I mean,
go big. I'm happy that they're telling a small scale story, because you can.
Yeah. I mean, I've said it before. These series are treated like limited series in the comics. It's like it gives us a chance to delve into who these characters are, gives us a chance to have breathing room for supporting characters, whether they be villains or, you know, heroes, whatever, and delve into some, in this case, with now 3 series here, in this case, you know, kind of, you know, heavy subject matter, grief, loss, identity,
love.
Yeah, love. You know, and you know who we are. You know, so I mean, I think that's something that you wouldn't get out of like a big title or a big movie.
Yeah,
that's
true.
Yeah, I think there's room for all of it, and there's room to explore. We've talked about this before. I'm so unenthusiastic about Phase 4, and I think part of it. I'm willing, you know, I'm going to go see these movies, and I'm open to being proven wrong and dazzled and wowed. But I think Mark, you might have, wowed. I think Mark, you might have hit on something, which is that I don't even know what the seeds are. Like, who could be the next big threat for the Marvel universe? All these films seem so disconnected.
I'll tell you right now,
each other to anything that's come before.
Start something. I'll tell you right now, Black Widow does nothing to start anything either.
That's sort of. I mean, I feel like that's a victim of bad timing. No, that's supposed to be like just a flashback.
But even that stinger, which hops you to the present day, doesn't do anything either.
Okay, most of us have not seen it yet, so we'll talk about that next.
John
Sunday.
just can't help himself.
If you don't mind me saying, Ian, you've got the flip side as well, and. What I think is interesting is your good guys who have bad history. See, Disney is doing the same thing with them, like you mentioned with Black Widow. There's some other guys as well that it's like they were bad, and you're putting Winter Soldier. You know, I mean,
scrub them up and clean them up.
Don't get me wrong. I love the, you know, we discussed it. I love Falcon and Winter Soldier. I like the Winter Soldier because he's a complex character. But at the end of the day, I know he was brainwashed or whatnot. He's killed a lot of people. You know what I mean? And we have that in our, you know, it's interesting to see them spin that. Like you guys mentioned, Black Widow. I mean, even Hawkeye's got a bit of a shady past from my understanding, you know, and they kind of gloss over and move away from that, you know. Hulk, in all honesty, could be triggered at any moment and start smashing and hurt people, and he has. And we did that. You know, that was kind of like with Ultron. They tried to do that a little bit with, you know, with Scarlet Witch to lead into Civil War, but even then, you're just like, okay, but these people have still done bad things, you know. And what level do you become accepting either of your villain redemption arc or your hero redemption arc? You know.
Well, the thing is, I mean, with the exception of Scarlet Witch, all of those characters, when they're first presented to us, they're presented in the hero. Okay, Scarlet Witch and Tony Stark. But Tony Stark, he is only the jerk capitalist weapons manufacturer for the first like 20 minutes of Iron Man. And even that is like he learns his lesson. He sees his name on the bomb and he's like, oh no. But they're presented in this heroic mold, and you find out later that they had this shady, dark, bloody past. So as an audience member, you're like, well, I'm glad they overcame that, because now I really like them. But it'd be really interesting, and they'd never do this, but to have a let's say 20 years from now they reboot all of Marvel starting with Iron Man, ironically, except that Tony Stark is the villain story, and it takes him 2 or 3 movies to learn the error of his ways.
That's a what if.
I would love to see, though they would never ever do it. Get Chris Evans back and be Captain Hydra. Please.
Captain Hydra.
Here's their next test, because they need it. You need another face, but you have a face that's done bad things. What does a Disney Logan Wolverine look like? He looks like a pussy, is what he looks like.
He looks like getting Hugh Jackman back.
I know, because even that character, Fox gave some edge to it for a bit, but we knew that character was going to clean up, because he does. But he was not above still, clawing as son of a bitch. So I don't know how Disney's going to do that as sanitized, even more sanitized than what Fox already did. So,
I as much as I like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, it's hard to imagine him as that character as anyone else. I think that Disney is going to start with a clean slate, and they're going to try and do what Fox did, which is get a young crew of people, but hopefully have a crew that gels and people want to keep coming back to. Timothy Chalamet as Logan. Yeah, there you go.
I'm actually glad Marvel Studios started, not Disney, because as much as everybody hypes up Captain America, and it's my PG-13 debate all over again. People crap on horror films and that. Cap kicked a guy into the blades of a propeller of a plane, and you saw him burst into red cloud of smoke. I'm like, that doesn't happen on Disney's watch. Okay,
that was under Paramount. It was the best.
Right. And now, granted, it's cool. He's the hero. I get it. It's a bad guy. Okay, but he still did that, and I think we needed that for those characters, because it shows you, okay, they're not afraid to go that far. Now, under the Disney umbrella, how are they going to play some of those angles? Oh, they're just all knocked out. And you think about it going, Hulk's fist is about this big right now, and he punched the guy with no armor in the chest. Oh, yeah, no, he's sleeping.
It's going through like in Friday the 13th Part 6.
Or to circle this all back, even if they ever have an evil inkling, they're gonna wipe it away with the retcon canon and the multiverse.
The multiverse is gonna be there.
Look how evil he was. That's not the real him. Let me give you the real one and tap in a bow for an action figure.
I'm concerned. It's gonna be cool at first. Like we're gonna get all cameos. They have their toy box. But you don't want them to spill the toys all over the floor at once. But luckily, I don't think they do that. They take their time. It won't be as good as Endgame. It'll be like, maybe that at the end. But it could just be, a garbage fire.
Well, it's the other thing is I kind of what you're saying, Mike, or feeding off of that. By the time these movies really get going, I mean, we're all going to be well into our 40s. And so I just wonder if it's going to be
50.
Well,
it's cool. It's like, it's not what it used to be.
David, I'm trying to give you cover.
I feel you, David. Don't worry.
I'm going to buy you guys some Just for Men whenever I get a chance.
There you go.
But that's the kind of thing is like, maybe this is just going to be the kind of the torch passing moment. Like we got the really good Disney Marvel stuff in those original phases when we were a lot younger and invested in this stuff. Because I swear to God, now that you've put Timothy Chalamet in my head, they are going to remake X-Men. There's going to be the scene where he and Rogue are driving in the truck, and she's going to go, "Does it hurt?" And he's going to go, "Every time."
I knew it. Yep, there it is.
Yeah. So on that note, guys, we talked a little bit about Loki tonight, but no, this was fun. So thank you very much. I guess I'll leave it open to any closing remarks or.
Well, I found it interesting that that whole backstory between young Sylvie, and Ravana, that when she was asking what was my Nexus event, and she said I don't remember. Of course, we don't believe her, but it made me wonder, like, okay, why were the time cops going to Asgard and snapping her up?
Right.
I mean, wasn't that just a parallel Asgard where there was a female Loki? I mean, what was the big deal? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out.
Yeah. My question to the dais is, since we've seen the curtain be pulled back, who is running things? Guesses for the last 2 episodes.
I mean, it could be Ravana.
That's my guess as well.
Well, either Ravana or her dad. Yes, I did more homework. You guys are going to get me to know and understand more about the Marvel Universe just by being on this show than I ever thought I would ever understand. But her dad, which apparently my understanding would lead to Kang the Conqueror, which a lot of people think maybe are leaning to. So she is being foot soldier for her dad, who's the wizard behind the curtain.
Okay.
But wasn't King her lover, not her dad?
Not at first, but when they met. I'm saying Kang's not met yet because what's his? If I was reading it up,
Mortis.
Whatever his name is with an O. He was the last, like the 40th kingdom of humans, the last unconquered kingdom by Kang, and Kang shows up to conquer them.
He's digging deep. I've never seen David snubbed.
And that where she shows up and she ends up meeting Kang, and then there's a lot of stuff that goes on that I was starting to read, and then my mind was just going to places like, I would love to see them do stuff like this because it's just so out there, but the mainstream audience is going to go, huh? But my twisted brain, I'm like, go here, please, because talking about Prime Kang and all this, but she falls in love with Kang eventually, but I that's what I felt when I read it. When she stops her and tells her tell me the full story, it felt like Ramona is not fully running things, but she knows who the wizard is behind the curtain, whether it's her dad or whoever.
Yeah, she started that actually makes a lot of sense, because in that scene we see her not only as someone who's participating in the kidnapping of young Sylvie, but she's actually in the uniform of like a B-15.
Right.
So she's a foot soldier, and you don't get the feeling that she was like undercover. You just get the feeling she was kind of a beat cop who worked her way up in this organization. So she knows what's going on. In fact, when that whole business started with the alternate timelines, she grabbed her boomstick or whatever and ran out to join the fight. She's not a puppet master. She's very much sort of like a middle manager who's got some kind of investment. I like that theory. I'm curious to see how it all plays out, but I hate to say this, but I've got a sneaking suspicion that I'm not going to be as wowed as the people behind the show kind of want me to be.
Wow, me too.
Yeah, because I think I said this last week. I'm going to be disappointed if it turns out that I'm right about the whole Wizard of Oz thing with the timekeepers. I mean, they gave that away in this episode. I'm like, yeah. Okay, if this isn't your end gambit, what else do you have for me? And no, that was not an X-Men reference.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. All right. Well, guys, I'm going to let all of us go. Thank you again for the Loki midweek mischief this week, and we'll be back next week at 9 p.m. Central talking about episode 5, the penultimate Loki. This is exciting. But until then, I'm always Ian Simmons from Kicking the Seat. We've got Mike Crowley from YPA Reviews. You'll probably agree. And 25 years later, Don Shanahan, also 25 years later, and Every Movie Has a Lesson, and Cinephile Hissy Fit, and Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck from The Spoiler Room, David Fowley of Keeping It Real. I do want to take this moment. I'm not going to tell any stories out of school, but Will Johnson, who was with us last week in the comments, Don's co-host on Cinephile Hissy Fit, we share a birthday today. And Yes, and also, unfortunately, he suffered a bit of a loss. So I don't want to get into specifics, but I do want to say my heart goes out to you, and I'm sure the rest of the crew here offer our deepest support and well wishes. So thank you, and we hope to see you back talking smack about Don in the very near future. But until then, next week we'll be back, same bat time, same bat channel, talking Marvel. So figure that one out. All right. Thanks, everybody, and good night. I'm ending the broadcast now.